I checked into her favorite hotel under another name, what the night refused to admit. I didn't intend to sleep. I intended to stop guessing. At 10 to 2, the bar of the Halcyon looks like a promise that learned to keep its voice down. The glassware hangs like small moons. The pianist doesn't believe in applause. The mirrored back wall keeps other people's faces and gives you yours only when you ask politely. I came because a message from my wife, client drinks, might stay with the team. Don't wait up. Wasn't a lie, but it left the door propped with a shoe. I wanted to see who came through and why. My name is Caleb. By day I make release plans for software we swear will behave. By night lately I pretend our marriage can be debugged with silence. Marta and I have been good at our life in the way two sensible people can be without trying. The bills paid, the calendar tidy, the laundry machine uncomplaining. We retired the grand fights. We kept the weather. The problem with weather is how easy it is to forgive even while you're shivering. The Halcyon is her place, not mine. She loves its quiet arrogance. She brings clients here to teach them what competence feels like when you can put it in a glass. I booked a room under a name my grandfather used at card games, Callahan, which looks close enough to my own to be found if I changed my mind. The desk clerk pretended it was normal for a man in a coat he didn't deserve to check in at 1:42 a.m. I asked for the 12th floor. She gave me 1206. A part of me hoped Marta had 1208. A worse part hoped she had 1210. The bar was all indifference and leather. I ordered rye I didn't want and took the end stool, the one with the sightline to the elevator. I told myself I would sit there like a person with a book. I put nothing in my hands and watched the pianist take the melody out to the alley and bring it back without getting arrested. People came. People left. The elevator sighed like a patient animal. At 2:11 the doors opened on a detail I had not rehearsed, her laugh, the one that only happens when she's slightly too tired to keep her edges up. She stepped out between two men and a woman. The woman was new, the men were not. Adrian was the one I noticed. He has the kind of face people trust in an emergency. The other man wore a tie like a mistake. Marta's coat was open. Her hair had come to an agreement with gravity. She looked beautiful in the way. A plan looks beautiful after it survives the meeting. She didn't see me. Not at first. They took a round table near the small tree the Halcyon insists is a fig. I watched a story I couldn't hear. Adrian hovered in the polite radius of men who have learned to control how they stand near married women. The new woman drew a circle on the table with the stem of her glass. The Thai man talked like he was trying to convince his own watch to believe him. If I had left then, I could have called it restraint. Instead, I drank a swallow of rye that believed in work ethics and waited to see which elevator door would betray me. She saw me because I let her. I didn't stand. I didn't wave. Maybe I wanted to know whether the surprise would look like guilt or delight. It looked like neither. She tilted her head a degree and blinked once, as if to retrieve my name from the place where names go when you're trying to be many people at once. Then she excused herself from the table and walked to the bar with the minute I had given her. "Caleb," she said, almost a smile, almost a dare. "I thought you were a morning person." I kept my voice where it belonged. "I thought you were coming home." "We're finishing the deck," she said. "We booked a room to get the slides done. Everyone's too tired to pretend their living rooms aren't lying." Her mouth quirked, a gesture that meant she had already recognized all the ways this could go. "Why are you here?" I didn't have a speech. I had a weather report. Because halls with shoes in them make me nervous. She blew a breath through her nose, a tiny laugh with the brakes on. "Room 1211, she said, as if I had asked something else. "If you want to know which shoe is mine." Adrian appeared by her shoulder like a person the night invented to keep me from saying something foolish. He had the decency to pretend he hadn't met my eyes before. "You must be the husband," he said, like a professional refusing to be an adversary. "Marta's the only person I know who can make a hotel fig tree look like a strategy." "I've heard worse compliments," she said. "We're going to finish the deck in 25 minutes. She looked at me, measuring. "Come up, or take the elevator down and go home, but don't sit here and take attendance." Adrian gave me a nod that meant he had his own problems and hoped I would keep mine on a leash. They turned. They went back to the table. She touched the new woman's sleeve and laughed at something Adrian said. She leaned back and looked toward the ceiling like a person remembering how to forgive the day. When they stood, the time man was already apologizing to his phone. They got in the elevator. The doors closed. I finished the rye and told the pianist that the piece he'd played at 1:56 had been brave. I rode up to 12 and walked the hall carpet of good decisions. I saw 12:06 and 12:08 and 12:10 and 12:11. I went past 12:11 because I didn't know what I wanted to be on the other side of that door. I knocked on 12:06, my room, and sat on the edge of the bed like a man who had lost his nouns and was trying to borrow them from the furniture. I did not text Marta. She did not text me. The walls did their job. At 2:47 there was a knock, a 3-beat rhythm she uses when it's late and we're trying not to wake the dog we don't have. I opened the door and Marta stood there without her coat. She walked past me, turned, and closed the door with a hand that had learned when to be gentle. She kissed me the way you kiss in rooms with mirrors facing the wrong way. It wasn't performative. It wasn't apology. It was contact, necessary and sufficient. I tasted coffee and tiredness, and the perfume she saves for when she thinks she'll have to be forgiven. I touched the back of her neck and felt the heat of a day that had taken her breath and given it back reluctantly. She pushed me onto the bed and sat beside me without letting go of my hand. "Do you want the version with more nouns?" she said quietly, "or the version that feels like air?" "Air first," I said. "We worked," she said. "We drank. I didn't kiss him. He didn't touch me. We took an elevator like 4 colleagues who wanted to be 5 better people. I'm sleeping at the office couch unless I'm sleeping in this room. In both cases, I'm asleep." I closed my eyes because that's how I listen when the words prefer not to be seen. "Nouns," I said. "I like him," she said, simple and terrible. "Not as a crisis, as a fact. He makes jokes that don't need me to rescue them. He stands the right distance away. He's generous with competence. If this were a universe that rewarded timing, I'd have met him before I met you or not at all. But this is the universe we have." "I thought your deck was a deck," I said. "It is," she said, "and I didn't write it alone." She squeezed my fingers. "Neither did I write us alone." Someone laughed in another room, the kind of sound glass makes when it remembers it used to be sand. The bed made its diplomatic noises. The AC found a steady hummed note. "Do you want me to leave?" I asked, "or to stay?" She leaned her forehead into my cheek. "I want you to do something that isn't politeness," she said. "I want you to be the person I married before we learned to be so good at weather." We didn't undress for cruelty or forgiveness. We undressed like people who needed a story they could hold with their hands. I slid my fingers beneath the hem of her blouse and found the line where day becomes evening. She bit my lip, not hard, and the room closed the curtains we hadn't bothered with. My hands remembered her spine like a language I'd stopped speaking because I was embarrassed to sound like myself. We made the kind of love that rooms tolerate if you ask them nicely. It was not fireworks. It was architecture. After, she lay with her head in my shoulder and traced a shape on my chest like she was drafting something no committee could approve. The clock on the table did its stubborn insistence. In an hour the lobby would pretend to have been moral the whole time. She spoke into the place where words choose whether to be sharp. I almost kissed him in the elevator, she said. I wanted to know if wanting could be greedy and still be honest. But then I remembered how small I feel when I tell a story that doesn't have room for us. So I didn't. And I came to the man who registers under old names because he can't stand to be far away when glass is lying. I swallowed the heat in my throat. I almost went home, I said. I almost sat in the kitchen and wrote a speech that sounded like the kind of man I don't respect. But then I booked a room next to yours because I would rather risk looking foolish than pretend the night wasn't in the mood to be exact. She laughed without teeth. You always did love words that aren't afraid of clocks. I kissed the shell of her ear, the quiet spot behind that doesn't have an official name. She shivered, then steadied, then took a breath that belonged to the person she'd been at 7:30 that evening before the bartender learned her name. Tell me what you want, she said. I want you to invite me when you're lacing your shoes, I said, and stopped because it had begun to sound like a list. I want to be in the same room when you're fascinating. I want us to feel our own weather even when it's inconvenient. I want us to remember that desire isn't a vote, it's a temperature. We can acknowledge it and not have to legislate. She rolled onto her back and stared at the ceiling as if the plaster had written something useful in white. I can do those sentences, she said. I can't promise to be uninteresting to other men. I can promise to be interesting to you first and most. I touched the inside of her wrist with the tip of my finger and watched her pulse learn which beat to keep. She turned her face to me and kissed me as if the room had decided to betray its mirrors for a minute. It wasn't a performance. It was a confirmation. We slept like people who had pretended not to be tired and finally ran out of discipline. At 8 her alarm went soft and surprised. We dress the way you do when you don't have to impress the day, but you would like it to respect you. She left for 12:11. I showered the smell of our honesty off my skin and kept the part that wasn't cosmetic. I checked out as Callahan and tipped the pianist for the piece he had played at 1:56 because bravery deserves retroactive credit. At the gym, the blue tape sulked across the floor. People in vests spoke the dialect of competence. Adrian waved from across the room, eyes cautious the way men with good hearts often are when they're trying not to be in the wrong story. Marta tossed me a roll of tape and said, "You're late," like a person relieved to be able to say you and mean it in the present tense. We worked. The morning forgot it had threatened us. The lines on the floor accepted their jobs. When a knot refused politeness, I looked at it until it remembered it was line and not plot. Adrian handled a stack of chairs like a man who has made his peace with gravity. A woman I didn't know brought a box of pastries and declared it a strategy. We ate before anyone tried to win. Around noon, when the room had decided to forgive the volunteers their excellence, Marta slid her hand into mine and held it while she pretended to read a clipboard. The pressure was ordinary and sufficient. It said something without nouns. Later at home, I taped the room key envelope to the side of the fridge where we keep proof that we are not elaborate dreams. It is small. It is paper. It says Callahan in a clerk's careful script. It is not a weapon. It is not a verdict. It is a reminder that when a door is propped with a shoe, you can walk through and see who is on the other side, and sometimes it is still the person you promised to find, again and again, in whatever weather the night has left. We don't talk about the elevator too often. We don't pretend the bar didn't have good light. We don't outlaw laughter. We touch in daylight as if the sun has opinions and we want to be on its good side. We invite each other when we're interesting, not just when we're frightened. We eat before we try to win. When the clock gets mean, we sleep. If you came for scandal, I owe you a worse hotel and better gossip. What I have is a room booked under an old name, a lobby that refused to judge, a man who knew how to be useful without auditioning for anything, and two people who decided that the opposite of secrecy isn't confession, it's invitation. The rest is maintenance. Bodies that remember how to be kind, mouths that learn the difference between a verdict and a kiss, and a night that didn't get its closing argument because it didn't need one.